All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever applies to you. My name is Noah Whitehorn, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about heavy metal music in Japan, and then Japan's cultural influence on metal music across the globe. So just to dive right in, heavy metal first came into being in the early 1970s with the band Black Sabbath, and quickly spread across Europe, the United States, and eventually into Asia. And the first notable Japanese heavy metal or hard rock band was Bow Wow, who would eventually change the name to Bow Wow. And they played a form of hard rock kind of similar to bands like Kiss, Guns N' Roses, and the band Poison. So one of the most difficult things about being a fan of metal music is that most of the people around you really love to say that everything that you listen to sounds the same, and it is incredibly frustrating. But the reality of it is that metal music is one of the most sonically diverse genres that can exist. Looking at Japan specifically, there are two subgenres of metal music that really stand out in terms of the diversity in their sounds, and that would be black metal and death metal. And because they're just so massive, I will also include a discussion on baby metal, but classifying them into a genre is a little bit difficult. All right, so the first subgenre of metal in Japan that I want to take a look at is black metal. So, just for a little bit of historical context, black metal originated in Scandinavia, specifically in Sweden, with the band Bathory, but really exploded across Norway, Finland, and even Denmark to a lesser degree. But bands like Mayhem, Immortal, and Emperor really became staples of the genre, and during the 1990s, the genre kind of came to international attention in a less than positive manner due to a series of murders and church burnings associated with the bands Burzum and Emperor. Looking at Japanese black metal specifically, there are a lot of bands to go through, but today I'll be touching on two. The first of which would be the first real black metal band to come from Japan, and that would be Psy. And Psy really focuses more on Japanese folklore, death, and occultism. A really kind of interesting set of lyrical themes. But as they went on, they would kind of become a little bit less straightforward, extreme, and a little more avant garde. And I'll just play a quick snippet of that right now. The second black metal band from Japan that I really wanted to touch on today is Gallhammer. And Gallhammer, they broke up in, I believe, 2007 or 2008. But while they were around, they were the only all-female extreme metal band to come from Japan. And I thought that was a really interesting dynamic because inside there is a female musician, but for the most part, all of the other bands in the country are full of men. It's a very male-dominated genre of music. But Gallhammer's lyrical themes take a little bit of a departure from Psy's in that they are a little bit more introspective. They do touch on the occultism that Psy is kind of known for, but the band also focuses a lot on suicide and mental illness. And they play a brand of black metal that is substantially slower and a lot more kind of doom laden than traditional black metal. And I'll just play a quick excerpt from their song At the Onset of the Age of Despair. And you'll kind of get a feel for this really kind of depressive style of black metal. So for better or worse, death metal is probably the most recognizable subgenre of metal. The low guttural vocals and the machine gun style drumming would indicate even to the person who has no idea what they're listening to that it's probably death metal. However, the term has also been used to kind of just colloquialize most of the genres of metal that have kind of lower style vocals, mostly as a media campaign to kind of reject the quote-unquote satanic panic that was sweeping America in the 1980s and 90s. So Japanese death metal is pretty intrinsically tied to the American death metal scene, and really goes back to the mid-90s when both the American and Swedish death metal scenes were kind of at their peak, were really spreading across the globe and really kind of gaining renown. And Japanese death metal really draws on the more American style themes of gore, horror, and unfortunately misogyny. Bands like Devourment and Gorvent really kind of use these lyrics about violence against women to kind of further their end and make music for the masses. The first death metal band I'm going to touch on today is the band Coffins, and Coffins began in the mid 1990s, and their approach to death metal made them very, very unique and kind of made them a little bit more approachable from people who listen to different genres of metal. They're less focused on the kind of machine gun technicality of American death metal, and really kind of play a style more focused on the guitar riffs themselves. It's a little bit slower, and the lyrical themes are not as closely tied to the American scene as many of their contemporaries. They do use the gore theme, they also focus a lot more on the occultism kind of present in black metal. And yeah, I'll just play a brief clip from their song Altars and Gore, and you'll kind of get a good idea of what Coffin sounds like. The second death metal band that I think is really interesting and really important to the development of a kind of a Japanese death metal scene is Gotu Totsu Kotsu. And Gotu Totsu Kotsu are a samurai-themed death metal band from Saitama Prefecture. And the founder of the band, Takahata Haruhisa, founded the band really because he wanted to create Japanese metal that Japanese people would listen to. And he kind of expressed this sentiment because he felt like Japanese society really scorned metal music, much the same way American society has, and kind of viewed it as uncool. And to that end, Gotu Totsu Kotsu really utilizes Japanese in most of their lyrical themes, and they only have the English in the title translations. They don't really use it anywhere else in their music. Other than that, all of the lyrics are entirely in Japanese. In addition to the primary focus on Japanese language in their music, GTK also employs kind of outdated verbiage and language that they've kind of just taken from older Japanese texts from the Edo period or from the Sengoku era. And Bernie Smith and Robertson note in their paper, Super Diversity and Translocal Brutality in Asian Extreme Metal Lyrics, that GTK uses the word tsuwamono in replacement of heishi for the word warrior. And in addition to these kind of outdated verbiage, GTK also employs the Yojijukugo, which is the four kanji idiom, which is meant to reflect a moral or tell a very, very short story. And within their song, Where Warriors Once Dreamed a Dream, they employ these four kanji idioms, at least when it's written out and you can see them. And these come from the Tale of the Heike, which is a really, really influential piece of Japanese literature about the Genpei War from the 1180s. And yeah, I'm just going to play a brief clip from their song Into the Jaws of Destruction, which will really kind of give you a good idea of the stylistic leanings of Gotu Totsu Kotsu. I would be remiss in talking about Japanese metal if I did not mention the band Baby Metal. Baby Metal is an interesting band in that they were formed as a result of a management guy from one of the recording companies in Japan who wanted to make a hybrid J-pop metal band. And so he did. He collected three girls and a backing band who were very well versed in metal music, and they quickly released their song Doki Doki Morning in 2011, and their rise to stardom from there was absolutely astronomical. And my first exposure to them was their song Gimme Chocolate, which kind of exploded in 2014 because of the music video was very, very strange, and the music itself was very, very strange. And yeah, I'm just going to play a brief clip from their song Megitsune, which is my personal favorite song of theirs, and you'll kind of get a good idea of what this band sounds like. All right, so on this next slide here, this is just a really interesting picture to me. This is Baby Metal and their backing band, all the folks dressed in white in the back, posing with Abath and King of Hell from Immortal. And they are two kind of legends of the Norwegian black metal scene. So I just thought this was a really funny picture because it's these big Scandinavian guys posing with these tiny Japanese girls. It's just a really, really funny picture. So moving on from kind of the Japanese metal itself, I'm going to be taking a closer look at Japan's influence on metal music outside of Japan. So obviously we live in a very globalized world. Everything we know can be accessed with the push of a button, and everything we can listen to can be accessed in the same manner. For many bands in the West, the allure of Japanese culture, history, and folklore is just too rich to pass up, and there are so many bands from America and the UK and Europe who really are just really interested in anime and the samurai history and, you know, yokai and stuff like that. And I'm just going to be going over kind of how these Western bands have interacted with these subjects and play some brief kind of excerpts from some of their music, as well as show off some merchandise from bands who have really taken influence from Japanese pop culture. So the first Western metal band to really kind of use any kind of Japanese theme or Japanese history in their lyrics was Iron Maiden, who are one of the most prolific, legendary metal bands to ever come out of the United Kingdom. And their 1983 song, Sun and Steel, is actually about Miyamoto Musashi, who, well, I don't think he was necessarily a samurai. He was one of the greatest swordsmen or duelists to emerge from late Sengoku and early Edo period Japan. And in addition to that kind of lyrical theme of Musashi, the band's mascot, Eddie the Head, who's like a zombie who appears on all of their album covers from when they first started in 1981 all the way up until the most recent one. And he's been kind of depicted as a samurai on more than one occasion. And so that's just another little piece. Iron Maiden is a very historically inclined band when it comes to their themes and lyrics and kind of displays. So the samurai theme was really fitting with them, and it's just kind of one example of how Western bands have really taken Japanese history and culture and really just run with it. The other one of the other bands who uses Japanese themes really substantially in their music is Trivium. Trivium is one of my personal favorite bands, and their lead singer, Matt Heafy, is half Japanese, and he's very much in touch with his own Japaneseness. He speaks fluent Japanese, he has traditional Japanese-style tattoos all over his body, and the band themselves use the skull of an oni as their primary mascot, and have included depictions of samurai throughout their career. On the on the cover of their 2006 album The Crusade, there's a samurai kneeling, and then their 2008 album Shogun very obviously takes reference from the military land governors of the Sengoku period. And while most of the songs on that album are not inherently about Japanese folklore, the songs Kirisuite Gomen and Shogun are very, very much about samurai history, and then the song Down from the Sky is actually about the dropping of the atomic bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In the bottom right-hand corner, you can see, it's actually one of the shirts that I own of theirs. It's a 10-year anniversary of the album Shogun. This is supposed to be representative of Kirisuite Gomen, which was the right to take heads, or the right to strike by the samurai. And so obviously there's the head there with the kanji for Shogun pretty blatantly expressed on the shirt. So, of all the subgenres of metal music, Japanese culture has probably had the most profound impact on deathcore. Deathcore is a style of music that places heavy emphasis on really intense drumming and the low and high vocals that are implemented throughout. as well as the musical technique known as a breakdown, which is basically just the main guitar riff being played at a substantially slower speed than it normally would be. So within deathcore, the biggest influence from Japan has been anime. There are many bands who've kind of taken anime as a big part of their merchandise, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. And there's also a band who I'm going to touch on in the next little bit here, who have taken themes from an anime and made that pretty much their entire career. They've taken so much influence. It's in their artwork, it's in their band name, it's in their song lyrics, and you'll kind of just see how much anime has really impacted this genre, this style of music. Alright, so Brand of Sacrifice is the band I previously mentioned that had taken anime as their principal lyrical theme, and they've really kind of just made a career out of it. The band's name itself, Brand of Sacrifice, comes from the anime Berserk by Miura Kentaro. The lyrics of most of the band's songs are also based on Berserk and its idea of the God Hand, which was a quintumvirate of demon lords who controlled society. I am personally not very well versed in anime, so this took a lot of digging on my end. But the band's music itself employs a lot of symphonic elements in addition to the extreme musical technicality of the drums, guitars, and vocals. And I'm just going to play a quick clip from their song Divinity off the album God Hand. Very anime influence, and the album cover from that album is down in the bottom right-hand corner. Just really quickly on this slide here, I just wanted to look at some of the merchandise that has been influenced by anime for a few other Western bands. So on the bottom left-hand corner is the band Distant. I have a few pieces of merchandise of theirs, but this one specifically I don't have. This is just supposed to be an anime styling of a fan, of a girl who's a fan of the band. On the right-hand side there, obviously, it's Hello Kitty. Slaughter to Prevail is a Russian band, and they used this Hello Kitty piece as a special Valentine's Day merchandise item. And as we know, Hello Kitty is a very globalized franchise, and this was just a really funny example of one of the most extreme bands I know, kind of just taking a very cute, childlike thing and putting it onto their merchandise. And then in the middle, Within Destruction is a Slovakian band, and they took this piece. This is Nezuko from the anime Demon Slayer. That's one of the few anime I have watched. It's very, very good. And yeah, I just thought this piece was really interesting because I'd never seen it before, and I just thought it was really interesting that Demon Slayer has also just garnered such a wide appeal across different mediums within the last several years since its release. Alright, so just some concluding thoughts here. As we know, globalization is a pretty important piece of anthropological thought, and metal, I think, is a really interesting piece of that. In an age where globalization happens in an instant, metal music has had both a profound impact on other cultures as well as taking influence from numerous other cultures. Metal itself is a very kind of niche genre of music, but I feel like there's so much unique sounds, unique merchandise, unique themes present throughout that I feel like it can actually garner a much wider appeal than it currently has. And as we've seen in Japan, there's a very multifaceted scene. It goes from very depressive styles of extreme music to kawaii pop music, and then in the West we've seen anime, samurai, and history and folklore kind of really dominate lyrical themes, merchandise, and yeah, I just think that metal is a much, much broader genre than people give it credit for, and the Japanese metal scene has had a very, very big impact on that.